45 holds a Klan rally in Michigan today, and he basically tells his inbreeding redneck base that he was exonerated from that the Russian collusion hoax is finally dead, and that he's been exonerated and vindicated. Obviously, he's not been exonerated and he's not been vindicated. Oh, total vindication. But he claims that he was exonerated, which he wasn't. But the article did make a mistake earlier, quoting Gerald Ford by saying that he was born in Michigan, but he wasn't. Grand Rapids, Michigan was Gerald Ford's hometown, but it was not his birthplace. But somebody made that mistake earlier, so the article has been somewhat corrected, except for the only thing that wasn't corrected was the lies that 45 told. Um, in Grand Rapids, Michigan, where 45 was holding his Klan rally, fresh off what he claims was total vindication in the special counsel's Russia investigation, told his supporters that here Thursday he had vanquished a corrupt cabal of Democrats. Technically, the Democrats are not the ones really corrupt, it's the Republicans. The news media and the Washington elite who tried to nullify his historic election victory by painting him as an agent of Russia. Of course, his election victory was not historic, and technically he did not really win because if the Electoral College didn't exist, he would not have won. After 3 years of lies, of course he would know because he lies all the time. Um, and slander, the Russia hoax is finally dead. 45 declared the collusion is over. In his first Klan rally since the end of the 22-month investigation, the squatter gleefully disregarded the old soul, but revenge being a dish best served cold, he came on stage, um, hot, and served up one scourging zinger after another. Of course, when they're talking about hot, I said they're not talking about looks either because the guy's butt fucking ugly. Talk in particular delight in ridiculing Adam Schiff of California, who oversees the House Intelligence Committee, and other Democrats who have led calls to investigate Cheeto. They're on official respirators right now. 45 said, his mouth dripping with contempt. They're giving mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Little pencil neck Adam Schiff, he's got the smallest, thinnest skin I've ever seen. And 45, you got the ugliest fucking face I want to bash in. Um, it was calculated show of outrage by a president who is by a squatter. Basically, he's not really president because he doesn't act like it. Who has decided to seize on the Russian investigation to frame his ordeal as a conspiracy by his rivals to legitimize him and diminish his achievements. Problem is, 45 hasn't achieved anything since being in office. 45 has always peppered his speeches with hells and damns, but on Thursday he crossed the line into cruder language. The Democrats need to decide whether they continue to defraud the public with ridiculous bullshit, the squatter said. Technically, if you think about it, who's ridiculing the public? Who's defrauding the public with public bullshit? 45. In vilifying his opponents, 45 was not troubled by the fact that the 300-plus page report by Robert Mueller, the special counsel, has yet to be released, or that Attorney General William Barr, in his summary of Mr. Mueller's findings, stipulated that the report did not exonerate the squatter, even if it did not find him guilty of conspiracy or of obstructing justice. It's interesting, 45 said. Mr. Miller was a god to the Democrats. He was god to them until he said no collusion. They don't like him so much now. In many ways, and I still don't like you, 45. In many ways, the speech was a return to first principles for Mr. 45, or Squatter 45, reviving his insurgent scene that fueled his campaign in 2016. He said the Russian investigation underlined the need to drain the swamp, and he celebrated his cheering supporters over what he described as the faithless elites in Washington. That's because his supporters are inbreeding rednecks that basically don't know shit. He's like, I'm squatter and they're not. He said they came and they didn't even know these people existed. 45 said of the elites, I have a better education than them. No, you don't. I'm smarter than them. No, you're not. I went to better schools than them. Yeah, that's because your family paid for them and they brought the schools off. 45 also went after the fake news media, celebrating what he claimed was a sharp decline in ratings for CNN and MSNBC after the Mueller findings were released, and predicting they would never regain their credibility. And 45 would not know about credibility because he never had any, neither does faux news. The squatter, however, made exceptions for faux news, praising the network's lineup by its commentators' first names. Racist inbreeding redneck Sean Hannity, racist inbreeding redneck Tucker Fucker Carlson, and dumb cunt inbreeding redneck Janine Pirro, noting with pleasure that Janine is back, in reference to Ms. Pirro's brief suspension after she made disparaging comments on the air about a woman in a Muslim dress. 45 called the investigation an extravagant waste of time and he's wasting time in office by being there because he hasn't done anything. That detracted from administration that he insisted had compiled a sterling record. The Russia witch hunt was planned by those who lost elections to try and illegally gain power by framing innocent Americans. And 45 has never been innocent a day in his life, so he wouldn't know anything about being innocent. He declared, despite his phony, corrupt, disgusting, Claude, we've done much more together in the first years than any administration history. Bullshit. Grand Rapids holds special meaning for 45 as the site of his final campaign Klan rally before his upset victory in 2016. He won Michigan by fewer than 11,000 votes, which is 2/10 of the 1%. The first Republican to do so in 1984. It was one of three Midwestern states, along with Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, that cemented his victory over his Democratic opponent, Hillary Clinton. Grand Rapids was also the hometown of another president, Gerald Ford, whose presidential museum sits across the river from the arena where 45 spoke, a monument to the moderate republicanism that the squatter has banished and the Washington establishment that he has upended. The timing of the Klan rally so soon after Mr. Barr's disclosures prompted greater than usual concerns about security, given 45's habit of stirring up the crowd and heaping abuse on reporters. At his last Klan rally in El Paso, a member of the audience assaulted a BBC cameraman because he basically incited the violence. The signs of tighter security in Grand Rapids included more visible security personnel and sturdier barriers between the news media and the audience in El Paso. Reporters were seated in the stands unprotected from the crowd.
No.
Excuse me. The mood in the arena, however, was no more intense than at other 45's Klan rallies. If anything, the crowd seemed a bit sedate as he began speaking. Many held up signs that said, "Jobs, jobs, jobs," and "Where the fuck are they?" reflecting the economic priorities that drive voting in this Rust Belt state. And for all his indignation at the start of the Klan rally, 45 lapsed into a well-worn themes later in the 1 hour and 22-minute Klan rally, even delivering a leisurely reminiscence about his election victory. Bill Clinton said, "You better get up to Michigan," 45 said in an interlude that mocked the former president's efforts to convince Ms. Clinton's advisors to pay more attention to the state. "And do you remember, this was my last stop for my Klan rally?" On Sunday evening, after Mr. Barr delivered his summary of the Mueller report, the squatter, who was in Palm Beach, Florida, was urged by his aides to avoid a tone of triumphalism in his reaction. That lasted about an hour until he delivered an angry denunciation of those behind the investigation before he returned to Washington. As days wore on, 45 took aim at news organizations and demanded the resignation of Democrats like Schiff, Womi, accused of lying repeatedly and discussing potential collusion between 45 and the Russians. Now, if anybody should resign, it's 45, because he hasn't done anything since being in office. In a warm-up rally more than an hour before, more than an hour before 45 arrived, Laura Cox, the chairman of the Michigan Republican Party, led the crowd to chants of "No collusion, no obstruction." The crowd also chanted, "Lock her up." Technically, they should be shouting, "Lock him up," meaning 45. After Ms. Cox denounced Ms. Clinton for counting Harvey Weinstein as one of her supporters on a flight to Grand Rapids, Michigan, Corey Lewandowski and David Bowie, two former campaign advisors for rallying up 45 on Air Force One before his Klan rallies were aboard, inside the White House, aides were concerned about two of them tagging along and possibly having open access to the squatter, but ultimately did not take steps to limit their travel, according to a person familiar with the planning. 45 has long savored his victory in Michigan, but the state could be more of an uphill struggle in 2020. Democrats made significant gains in the 2018 midterm elections, including winning the governorship. General Motors, one of Michigan's key employees, has laid off workers despite 45's efforts to pressure the car maker to expand manufacturing in the United States. He also faces headwinds in winning congressional passage of the retold version of the North American Free Trade Agreement, which he has promoted as benefiting workers in Michigan, which it actually hasn't. Inside the arena, however, 45 supporters basked in the glow of the squatter's claims of vindication and expressed indication on his behalf of the proliferating investigations into him and his administration. "He went through so much persecution," said Brenda Frey, a medical assistant from nearby Muskegon, who recalled attending his Klan rally here in 2016. "They were so unfair to him." Technically, if you want to look at anybody who's been treated unfairly, look at Hillary. You've been trying to investigate her emails and investigate Benghazi when already they couldn't find nothing to prove that she did anything.